Hey, welcome back to the Realm of History. That was some pretty fantastic calligraphy there, which we learned about all the way back in chapter 10, which was really the first chapter that we learned about related to the AP world. So today we are back at it with a little live review. Got a little agenda for you to go over, and we'll talk about some of the key things. We are going to have the quiz tomorrow. I put a little poll up there on the Instagram to see kind of the Instagram, of course. But we want to see where you're kind of feeling that. And I just want to make sure that you know that I'll try to do everything in my power to shorten or reduce down the quiz length so that we can get it in the 30 minutes. One thing I'll say about that before I even get into the live agenda is I need you to come ready tomorrow. So tonight, after this session, make sure you staple all your documents together at home. Put them in order. You know that it's always blank review sheet, then numbered and defined terms, then sections 1, 2, 3, and 4. Staple those together so that tomorrow you can come in, turn in your documents, start your quiz right away. There's going to be no time for error tomorrow, no time to do any prep work. You're going to have to come in. I'll probably have your quizzes right there, handing them out to you at the door so that you can pretty much maximize your time. Okay. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into, first of all, what we're going to be talking about. I'll have some key advice. I have some more things to say to you. I'm going to go over all of the key terms. The figures, I'm not going to go over unless you ask questions. There really weren't any places on the sheet, so it's going to be pretty much terms that I go over. I will give you a lot of short answer advice. The AP advice, we'll talk about in a minute. Basically, from the poll that came through, it was about 65 and then later about 70% content. So what I'm probably going to do is just make the quiz content only, which would be what I told you there. And then I will probably make the AP part like an optional practice so that you could do it if you want to, and then send me a picture. Maybe that could become some extra credit. We'll see. But hey, if you care about the class, you will do that. And then I'll know, like, the people who do the work, send me a picture of what they did, then I'll know that they care about the class. We'll close off with a little bit of question and answer session, and then, of course, some final advice at the end. Let's get started with a little bit of key advice. This one's going to be important that we go through here. Before we do this, though, hey, tap in. Let me know that you're here. But this time, have some fun with it. Get a little creative. Tell me what's on your mind. Tell me what's on your mind. I'd love to see what you have in there, and what thoughts are going through your mind. And feel free to be open as much as you want. I'd like to get your input on how things are going, make sure that everybody's good. But also, give me a thumbs up, like this video. It helps mess with the YouTube algorithm and gets things going for me too. Okay, so one thing that I want to say, key advice wise, is write things down from the session tonight. Make use of this, make it efficient, focus in, be here now. Make sure that you're ready to go. Number 2, I think more important than ever, pray for the right things, right? Remember, you're probably stressed about this quiz. You're like, I'm not going to have enough time. But in the grand scheme of things, you have so many more important things to worry about in your life. So do I. So we got to keep that in the top of our minds, and making sure that we're praying for the right things. Saying thank you to the good Lord, praying the prayer of gratitude, praying for our health and safety, praying for our family's health and safety. I want to pray for all of you. I know that many of you will be traveling over the weekend or next week. So I want to say a prayer for your health and safety in all of your travels, and for all of your families or family members who will also be traveling. I'll be traveling. I'm going to be going to a little vacation action with the family as well. So I would appreciate your prayers. I always pray for you. So I think that I would definitely appreciate your prayers. Number 3, make sure that we are being here now. Right, focusing on the task at hand, not only tonight, but also tomorrow. I think that's really important, to be here now, focus in, and make sure that we're maximizing our time and effort. Number 4, I keep saying this all the time. Say thank you to your parents, right? Make sure that you thank your parents for all the blessings that they bestowed upon you, for all the things that they do for you. I mean, I see the parents picking you up, dropping you off. This is a big deal. Like, don't take that stuff for granted. Make sure that you say thank you to your parents for everything that they've done for you. And number 5, really right now, one thing I'm still seeing in sophomore boys and girls is just squirreliness when it comes to a challenge. Like, I just feel like you are afraid to take on challenges. And I know I've been your age. I wanted to take the easy way out sometimes, but I'm telling you, it's not the way. It's not the way. Like when you get to my age, when you've been teaching as long as I have, you're going to understand that students who go through the challenges are college ready. Students and athletes who go through difficulties are ready for the next level. If you always take the easy road, if you always take the easy way out, when you get to the real test, you're not going to be ready. And my job as your teacher is to make sure that you understand that and make sure that you are ready. So I hope that you rise to the occasion. I like to use the analogy of like when you're playing sports. Like I went to some volleyball games this year where our team crushed the opponent. Like the opponent barely scored 1 point. Like our libero started serving and could have served the entire game and aced each time, or could have at least gotten a point each time, and we would have never had to substitute anybody. That's not a fun game, right? Like when I ask the basketball players, like, "Hey, which game could I come to? Which game do you want me to come to?" They don't say the easy games. They don't say they want me to come to the game that they're going to win 54-3. They tell me they want me to come watch when it's a good game, and that's for a reason. That's because those easy games aren't fulfilling. They're not fulfilling. Easy tests aren't fulfilling. When you take an easy quiz, you're like, whatever. But when you take a hard one and you do well on it, now that's what feels good, right? So that's what I'm trying to say to you, trying to meet those challenges and making sure that you are definitely ready. A couple more points that I have. I want to share just one more thing before I lose you here. I say this a lot to my students and my athletes, but I want to make sure that it resonates with you. There's break coming up, a lot of things going on. Maybe your parents might be going out of town. Maybe you're going to be going out of town. Maybe you're going to be alone because you don't have school. Like maybe you're staying home and your parents work. Here's my advice to you. Always do the right thing. You know what's right and wrong, right? The measure of a person's real character is what they would do if they knew they would never be found out. That's a great quote by a British philosopher named Thomas Macaulay. You can look it up. But furthermore, I want to tell you this. You can make 1,000,000 good decisions. You can make 1,000 good decisions. It only takes one bad decision to ruin your whole life. That's it. All of those great decisions, it only takes one bad one to ruin your life. Okay, so make sure that you have a good grounding of right and wrong, morals and ethics. Those are all very important things. Okay, next. What I want to take a look at is going to be the key terms first. Okay, we're going to take a look at the terms. So what I did when I got home is I wrote down all the terms on the screen. So you'll be able to see all of the terms and everything that I want you to have down. So starting with enclosure. Okay, a lot of questions about enclosure today. I was kind of flabbergasted by the amount of questions on enclosure because it was one of the terms that was directly in the text. But here's what we have. These are large farmers buying up small farmlands. They then combine all of their holdings into a big, large land holding. Then they place fences or hedges, which are bushes, around them and enclosing them. That's where the word comes from. And this was to keep predators off. Also mark the territory. By marking the territory where you knew where your boundary lines are, that's going to help to improve farming efficiency. Everything that was done to improve farming efficiency. So that's what you want to know about an enclosure. Next is another agricultural revolution term, crop rotation. Crop rotation, pretty simple. It's changing what crops were planted on a certain field each year. What you would do is you have to understand that there are some deep-rooted crops and also some shallow-rooted crops. So what this does is this allows the nutrients in the soil to replenish or increase over time. What I mean by that is that you're not going to get more nutrients in the soil, but what happens is nutrients are taken away in the deep layers when there's a deep-rooted crop, and then shallow-rooted crops are going to take away the nutrients in the shallow areas. And so what you do is you till up the soil after each time, and then you replant. So that helps to replenish or increase the nutrients in the soil, which allows for, once again, greater crop production, crop yield, or farming efficiency. Okay, moving on down, let's go to factories. Factories were really important during this time period. They were large buildings and meant to house large machines. A lot of these machines, like spinning mules, power looms, right, water frames, they were pretty big machines. And so you needed large buildings to house them. One of the other things that you'll really need to know is that they were usually placed near water sources, and that was to utilize the water power, such as the flow of the river, like we learned about today in the slideshow, or also to power water wheels, etc., etc. Next is the term entrepreneur. Pretty simple. It's just a business person, someone who's willing to take on the risks and management of business. The example that I used in this chapter was James Watt, the scientific inventor and advancer of the steam engine, and the entrepreneur Matthew Boulton, who helped market the product, right? James Watt was the inventor, but he wasn't really business savvy. Matthew Boulton was a businessman. He was able to market the steam engine, and eventually what happens? It gets into a boat, it gets into a train. So these were major advancements that people who understand business can make. That's what an entrepreneur is. If you watch Shark Tank, it's all about entrepreneurs. It's people trying to start business, trying to get investors, trying to sell their product. Socialism. Socialism is a term that a lot of people had a question about today. Let me break it down for you. It's basically the factors of production being owned publicly, which when you say owned publicly, that means they're owned by the government. And in socialism, the government actively plans the economy. The government is very much involved in the economic conditions and plans and prices and wages, so on and so forth. So in socialism, there is some private ownership in socialism. Okay, it's not entirely publicly owned, but most of the factors of production, the land, the labor, the capital, are owned publicly. So socialism, in comparison to communism, it does have a little bit of private ownership. It's not entirely publicly owned, okay? But the government is very much involved in the economy. Communism, on the other hand, is very similar to socialism. It's a complete form of socialism. There is a lack of private ownership in communism. And the idea of communism is that wealth is supposed to be distributed equally or evenly. I'm going to go out on a limb here. This is dangerous. Okay, communism. Let me talk about this real quick. What I've learned, this is just my personal opinion from studying history, there have been many countries that practice communism. What we usually see is when they try to distribute the wealth evenly, that yes, they do distribute it evenly, but most people are equally poor. Okay, most people are equally poor. And doesn't matter what job you work, you're going to receive the same income from the government. So what's the incentive to become a doctor? What's the incentive to become a lawyer, right? If you're going to make the same as the person working fast food. That's very confusing, right? So it's a collective idea. It's in theory, it sounds good. It sounds kind of biblical, but in practice, people are generally suffering. And we've seen Russia revolutions, okay, Eastern Germany revolution, Cuba, the Koreas. There's been many revolutions in different places against communist regimes, China. So that's something to keep in mind. If you study history, you're going to see that factor there. Okay, capitalism. With capitalism, it's totally different. It's the opposite end. It's lack of government involvement. Capitalism, you see a lot of factors of production that are privately owned, okay? So the factors of production, things like land, labor, capital, factories, stores are owned by individuals, not by the government, okay? So you're going to need to be able to explain the difference between capitalism and socialism, not necessarily communism, but really capitalism and socialism as economic practices. Okay, next is collective bargaining. There were also a lot of questions about this one today. Collective bargaining was from Section 4, and it's basically where employers and unions would work together and bargain with their employers for better wages or better working conditions. That's really what collective bargaining was. And what they would do is they would bargain for these things, and if they didn't get their way, then they would either threaten to strike or go on strike. They would refuse to work until these conditions were met. And those usually are pretty effective. They've been pretty effective. It's kind of the whole idea of what I tell you, sitting in the parking lot, right? I'm not saying to do that, but that's kind of what you got to think of when you're thinking about a strike. Okay, the factors of production, I've been talking about them a lot. They are land, labor, and capital. But in a broader sense, the factors of production are really the resources necessary to industrialize, right? It's really the resources that you would need to go through the process of developing machine-made goods. Okay, down the list to laissez-faire policy. All right. Laissez-faire policy is where owners of industry set the working conditions without government interference. It's a French term that means let do or let the people do as they please. So basically, it's saying let factory owners set the conditions. Like if they want to work their people 15, 16, 17 hours a day and pay them very little, that's fine. It'll all regulate itself when people don't sign up to work at that factory. And then they have to make adjustments to make people happier to work in their factory. That's really what laissez-faire economics are all about. Next, unions. Unions were really important during the later part of the Industrial Revolution to help gain workers those rights that they needed. There are still unions today. They don't exactly function the same as they did back then, but it's basically a voluntary association of workers, usually in a similar trade. Like, for example, today there's the UAW, which is the United Auto Workers. So all the different workers that work in the factories that make cars are part of the UAW. Okay. And so they would fight and bargain for better wages and conditions together, collectively. Next is the free market system. The free market system is really similar to laissez-faire economics. It's basically where the government does not interfere with economics. That's what a free market system is. Okay, very important. You might want to, if you're writing, you might want to put a star by this one. I can guarantee you that this one's going to be a short answer. So the three natural laws of economics, they come from the work of Adam Smith in his book, Wealth of Nations. They are the law of self-interest, the law of supply and demand, and the law of competition. Let me go through what each of these really mean in a brief fashion. The law of self-interest is that, hey, people work for their own good. Like they're not going to come to work unless they get paid, right? That's the whole goal. Like I told some of you today, I love my job. I absolutely love my job. I hate missing work. I want to be at work all day tomorrow because I want to give you the full experience of this class. And I'm going to tell you, I'm getting kind of, I don't know the right word, maybe melancholy, because our time is actually becoming short. Like it's almost March and we have March, April, and May. That's it. 3 months in the realm. It's gone by so fast. I really love this group of students and I'm going to miss all of you dearly. So, I'm trying to savor the moment and get every bit of time that we can, learning and growing and sharing the fun times, the hard times, the difficulties together. I think that's a really cool part of being a teacher. The second factor, though, is the law of supply and demand. Okay, the law of supply and demand really focuses on how prices are set. And it relates to this. If something is high in supply, but there's a low demand for the item, the price is going to be very low, right? Because they're going to try to get rid of those items. And there's not very many people that want them. So they're not going to spend a lot of money on them. The way that you entice those people to have more demand is you lower the price. Now, on the opposite end of that spectrum with supply and demand, if something is very low in supply, but very high in demand, now the price is going to be very high because the business owners know that there's a lot of people who want these items and there's very few of them. So to get our money back for this item, we're going to sell it for a very high price. This is true when like a new product comes out, like when a new iPhone comes out or when the PlayStation 5 comes out. It starts off at a really high price, like PlayStation 5, I don't know, $600, $650, whatever it was, especially if you get a special edition. And then over time, right, as more and more people buy it and then demand becomes a little bit lower for the item and then maybe new technologies come about, we see the price drop because there's going to be more and more produced and demand is lowering and lowering. So we see that price come down a little bit. And that's when a lot of people said, oh, okay, I wasn't going to pay $650 for the PlayStation 5, but $450, now I'm going to buy that tomorrow, right? So the demand and the price are based on supply and demand. That's just a natural law of economics that Adam Smith really pointed out in his book, Wealth of Nations. Finally, talk about the law of competition. Really what this means is that, hey, people and businesses are going to compete to produce the best product, right? Like if you buy a t-shirt from company A And after 3 times wearing it, it shrinks in the dryer and it shrivels up and it starts to fray and it starts to rip and tear. Versus if you buy t-shirt B, maybe it's a little bit more expensive, but it lasts you for 3 years. You know, you're going to probably buy that company's product, company B's product, more often than not, because it's a quality product, right? And you know that you're going to get your money's worth. So law of competition makes things better for the consumer, like you and I. We're looking for good products at a good price. So I think that Adam Smith was onto something. I like a lot of things that he taught. Okay, industrialization. This is the process of developing the means to produce goods by machine. So this is the process. It's like getting the land, the labor force, the capital. It's finding the right resources like coal, like water power, like iron ore. Like that's the process. That's the industrialization process. It involves the entire scope or the entire big picture of getting ready to make goods by machine. Final one that I'm going to go over today. I didn't go over every single one. I picked the ones that I thought were most pertinent for the quiz. Urbanization. Urbanization is simply city building and then the movement of people into those cities. So that's really what urbanization is in general. I didn't have time to produce a commercial today, so I'm not going to take a break. I'm just going to roll right into the short answer. So what I've done here is I'm going to talk about the short answers that I want to talk about, the ones that I think are most important. Don't be fooled. Just because I only highlight some of the things on the key concepts, that doesn't mean that the other key concepts won't get rolled into a multiple choice. Okay, some of the key concepts will be assessed in the multiple choice questions, but what I'm going to talk about next are primarily focal points for the short answer questions. I already gave you one big clue. That was what I just went over with the 3 laws of economics, or the natural laws of the economy, by Adam Smith. That one is definitely a short answer. Now, here are some other big things to focus on. Socialism versus capitalism. There is a chart that's on page 737 that is also denoted on your review sheet. So utilize that chart. Utilize what I said about who owns the factors of production tonight. I said with socialism, the factors of production are owned by the government, which means publicly owned. I also stated that in capitalism, the factors of production are privately owned, meaning owned by individuals. Okay, that would be the really big difference. If you could write that, you're on your way to a good answer. Okay, you're on your way to a good answer. Next, the 4 major effects of the railroad system. Oh boy, the railroad system. We know that that was something new. Here's what I want you to know about this. Be ready to write. These are the 4 major effects of the railroad system. Number 1, the railroad provided a cheap source of transportation for raw materials and manufactured products. Pretty basic stuff. Number 1. Number 2, a second effect, created new jobs for workers. These railroad lines, the railroad cars, the locomotives, they're not going to build themselves, right? That's jobs right there. That's a lot of jobs in making the engines, making the cars, making the tracks, these long tracks that go for hundreds of miles, thousands of miles. A lot of jobs were created by that. Number 3, pretty simple, increase the transportation of agricultural products and fish. People could have more fresh foods because trains could move faster than a horse and buggy. So that was a major effect also. And then number 4, it allowed workers to take jobs in distant cities because they could get on a train at 6 a.m. and by 9 a.m. they could be in a city that's 50 miles, 60 miles away, especially with the Rocket by George Stephenson, right? 25 miles an hour train. So those are really the 4 major effects of the railroad system. That comes from section 1, by the way. Then we have the 8 positive effects of the Industrial Revolution. This came from the notes in section 2. I had this on my slideshow, which I do have posted on the weekly agenda from last week. So I'm not sure if you're able to grab that from last week, but I'm going to go through it right now with you so you have it. So be ready to write. Very important. These are the 8 positive effects of the Industrial Revolution from section 2. Number 1, over time, more jobs in factories, more jobs building trains, more jobs building railroads, right? So More jobs were created because of Industrial Revolution. Number 2, the wealth of nations increased. Nations got very wealthy off of producing goods by machine, where other countries who were not industrialized were still producing goods by hand. A major advantage to the countries that have industrialized. Number 3, technological inventions. Inventions, technology, it helps make things easier for people, right? That's the whole goal. Number 4, we had a raised standard of living. The standard of living is how well do you live, right? The Industrial Revolution put money in people's pockets, made things easier overall, over time, not really at first, but over time in the long run, the standard of living was improved. Number 5, there was an increase in the production of goods. You could produce more with machines than you could by hand. It's pretty simple math. Number 6, because of the money that was being produced, because of the fresh foods that were being transported, people's diets improved. People's diets improved in the 1800s due to these differences that were brought about by the Industrial Rev. Number 7, you had clothing becoming more affordable because it was being mass produced. Supply and demand, right? We had a lot of clothing being produced. That's what all the first factories were. They were making cloth. So the fact of that matter is that clothing became cheaper. More people could afford to buy it. Number 8, there was actually an expansion on educational opportunities. I taught you in section 3 that a lot of the factories that were created in the US, they were run by teenage girls. And those girls were brought into factory towns, and part of their day was being educated. For example, young boys, young girls, this would happen around. When their parents would go to the factory to work, they would go to school. They would learn how to become a factory worker, but at least it was some form of education, some of the basics. Okay, let's talk about something important next. AP tips and suggestions. I did the Instagram poll. I'm going to share my screen with you really quick, and then I'll come back. All right, so this is what it came down to. 68% said they would, if they had to choose, they would choose the content portion. 32% said AP. Now, what I did is I filtered it because I had a lot of goofballers from my former students from years ago who were also chiming in. So I filtered it out, and it ended up being 65-35. So it wasn't much of a difference after filtering it out. So what I'm going to do, based on your input there, and I know that this isn't going to be something that suffices for all of you, which is fine, but I'm going to just do the content part tomorrow because we only have 30 minutes. So I'm just going to do the content part. I'm going to keep the content format as it was. It's going to be 30 multiple choice and 5 short answers. So you are up against it. I know you're going to have to come in ready to go. Okay. Don't make excuses. Just rise to the challenge. Just meet the challenge. I'm going to cut out the AP portion. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make the AP portion an optional assignment that you could do if you really care and you really want to get ready for the AP exam. You can do it. You can send me a picture. I'll look at it, make sure you're on the right path. But it'll be up to you. And I'm going to find out a lot by that. I'm going to find out, hey, who really cares? Who actually cares about it? I'm going to put in the time for you. Will you be willing to put in the time is the question. That's what I'm going to take a look at. And that's something that I'm looking forward to learning there. Okay, I think that takes us to question and answer time. Yeah, let's go to question and answer time. So I'm going to open up for questions. I'm going to go to the comments. This is my favorite part. I get to see all the different comments and who's here. Looks like a lot of ballers are here today, which is awesome. Kirk trying to stunt by saying no quiz tomorrow. That is not going to happen, Kirk. There's definitely a quiz. Sign of weakness by you, by the way. All right, I'm trying to get down to questions. So go ahead and type in your questions. I see some right now. I see Kirk has a question here. What was the effect of the War of 1812? First of all, great picture right there. That it looks like myself, the kicker Kirkulator, and Master Janda. Wow. That is a group right there. That is a sign of strength. Okay, so the effect of the War of 1812 was significant for the U.S. Here's the story. Remember, Napoleon tried the continental system. He tries to put a blockade on the British. It didn't work. And then the British counter him with a blockade of their own on France. That angered the U.S. because we couldn't trade with our partner, the French. So then we get involved in this naval war with the British, and then they put a blockade on us. So we couldn't get ships out anywhere. Our Navy wasn't really that strong at the time. So the effect of it is it caused the United States to have to start producing items here at home. All the items we were getting from the British and the French, we had to now start becoming self-reliant, self-sufficient. And we did industrialize because of Samuel Slater escaping from Great Britain and building a spinning machine here, right? So that starts the industrial process here. That was all because of the War of 1812. All right, next up. Do we have to explain the natural law? Yeah, yep. You're going to have to know them in and out, just like I did tonight. You're definitely going to have to be able to not only list them out, but explain them as I did on this session here. Oh, picture wars are heating up. Okay, we got Pia Z says, what did Karl Marx do? Karl Marx wrote a book called The Communist Manifesto. He and another communist believer named Friedrich Engels, they wrote this book called The Communist Manifesto, which basically states, all right, there's the capitalists and there's the proletariat. They said that the capitalists are your factory owners. They're the haves. There's the haves and the have-nots. The capitalists are the haves. The proletariat are the have-nots. Marx and Engels in the Communist Manifesto says that the have-nots are eventually going to rebel against the haves. They are going to overthrow the factory owners, and they're going to take all the wealth and they're going to evenly disperse it, right? They're going to spread the wealth evenly and equally to all people. That's communism. So he said, workers of the world unite. And what he's saying is he wants to lead a revolution against the rich. He wants the have-nots to overthrow the haves. And so that kicks off the communist revolution, and some countries turned to communism because of this. Alex says, what do we need to know about your boy, William Wilberforce? William Wilberforce was one of the most influential people fighting for the abolishment or the abolition of slavery. And he also wanted to end the slave trade. He also wanted to end the slave trade. So he was from Britain, and he worked during the 1800s to do two things. Number one, end slavery entirely. Number two, end the slave trade. And he was fairly successful. His work did lead to the end of both of those things for the British. Johnny K says, will it be extra credit? I'm imagining that you are referencing the AP part. I'm kind of throwing that out there. I'm not exactly sure I want to do. I want to see who really cares. So I don't know. I'll announce that tomorrow. I'm not going to make that decision tonight. If I say it's extra credit, then I don't really know who cares. Because if I make it extra credit, then somebody does it just because they want the extra credit. Like what I want to know is like, are you willing to go the extra mile for the realm, for the AP test? How much do you want it? That's what I want to find out. If I make it extra credit, that's not going to answer my question. Julian S. is looking at the key concepts, and he wants to know, what are the new industrialized countries? Mexico, places in South America are newly industrialized countries today. China, Russia, those are actually some of the countries that held off on industrialization during the revolution and then didn't industrialize until really the 1900s. Okay, so that would be how I would respond to that question. Kira, could I repeat the first major effect of the railroad system? Yeah, it provided a cheap source of transportation of raw materials and also manufactured products. Wow, Master Janda, man, look at that hair. Love it. That's a nice fro. All right, Gabby says, do we need to know all the people and inventions in section 1? All right, so on your review sheet, it says on the third key concept, major inventions of the Industrial Revolution. Yes. So on the board, I had inventions starting with the spinning jenny, The flying shuttle, going all the way down to the power loom. Yes, those inventions, I think it's important that you know. Question or statement, Master Ashton? Jeez, just okay. I'm supposed to just figure out what you want. I got you, though. I can read your mind. James Watt was an inventor, and he was a scientist. And what he did is he developed a better version, a more efficient version of the steam engine. That's really what you want to know. Oh my God, I don't know who that is. I'm not sure who that is. That looks like a model, though, of some sort. Maybe that's like a picture off of a magazine or something like that. I'm not sure what Jan is up to. What did Karl Marx duo? I think that means do. He did write a book as a duo with Friedrich Engels, if that's what you're referring to. But I already answered this question just a moment ago. I hope you were paying attention. Also, just answered this one. I think you're just trying to get into picture wars. I'm on to you. Okay, the most important, here's a real question by Jay Janda. What was the most important thing unions did? With this in mind, the most important thing that I would say that unions did is collectively bargain. They would collectively bargain to try and make working conditions better for their workers. That was really the ideology there. Ryan, is the textile industry just the creation of clothing in factories? Yes, textile workers are cloth workers. They are people who create clothes. Yes, that is correct. Johnny K. People that want extra credit care, though, only about their grade. They only care about their grade. That's really what they care about. They don't care about passing the AP exam. They just want to get the extra credit because they want a good grade. But in real life, like the acronyms, like the ACT, the SAT, the AP, the GPA, not as important as having grit. What I say by having grit is that want to. It's that attitude of not backing down from challenges. Yeah. Your thesis could be valid, though, Johnny K. You could have a valid argument there. You just have to expand upon it. So go ahead and expand further if you want to have this debate by way of the comments. I'm willing to do that with you. Yes, I think that was some type of model from a magazine. I'm pretty sure. PSC model Gabby. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I don't know what that means. Alex F. Oh, are you saying that is one of the Gabbies? Oh, okay. That's possible. I'm not sure. That's very possible. That's very possible. Alex F. What are early and later results of the industrial revolution? Okay, let me summarize that for you. Early results are not very good, right? Like the standard of living was very difficult early on. A lot of people lost their jobs to machines, like the Luddites. Rage against the machine, man, right? You got to watch out for that because a lot of people were angered at the early part of the revolution because they were losing their jobs. People were getting, the small farmers were being bought out by the large farmers, right? So early on, like some of the early impacts, not very good. All right. People were working 14 hours a day, living really tight in those tenements, like I showed you in the slideshow on last Friday. So some of the standard of living was not great starting out. But as I went through the 8 positive effects, over time, the later results, there's an increase in jobs, the better diets, people could afford better clothing, right? The standard of living improved. So over time, some of those things get better. That's basically what you want to know there. I care only about the realm. Jay Kassab. I hope that's true. That's awesome. If that's true, sign of strength. Janda, by doing the AP, it technically helps their grade anyways. It helps their AP score. Yes, but it doesn't, if I don't make it extra credit, it's not going to really help their grade on this quiz. But, I mean, yeah, I see what you're saying. Ashton told me he was going to cheat off of his watch. Well, unfortunately, Johnny, your track record proves that you did use the watch to cheat, but you told me that you didn't. So then I believed you. But I'm a little skeptical. The fact that you're bringing it back up, not working in your favor there. Just saying. Jacob, oh my goodness. Ashton told me he was going to make a cheat sheet or write on his hands. All right. I have to check the hands tomorrow. I don't have time, but while you're taking the test, I'll come around. Yes, Ashton, you are a target. That's because you're a cool guy. Let me just say that. When people come at you, they're either jealous or they really like you. That's what I've learned. I mean, when people come at you, take it as a compliment because it means they like you or they're jealous of you. So just take it with stride. Keep putting one foot in front of the other. If you always take the high road, you'll never have to worry. If you fire back, though, like they win. Like it's when you start firing back, you let them know that they got to you. So all you need to do is just kind of ignore it and be like, yeah, all right, cool. I'm sorry you feel that way, but I'm just going to go about my business. I'm going to be me. That's all you can do. The more you play into it, the more they're going to do it. Johnny, it would be pointless to take this AP class if we didn't care about passing the exam. So therefore, in my opinion, we should be able to get extra credit from this AP. The point is, Johnny, the motivation should not be the extra credit. The motivation should be, I have an opportunity to practice, and that is the sole reason I'm going to do it, to practice to get better. There should be no incentive for doing that, in my opinion. You shouldn't have to be incentivized to get ready for the AP exam. Yes, after the incident. Yes. Okay, we got some sussiness going on. Pia. Oh gosh, golly. Yes, Pia. Ooh, what's that? Okay. I did explain William Wilberforce fought for the abolition of slavery and also to end the slave trade. I don't think I want to look into what that picture is. I'm going to move on from that. Adam Smith, Dominic. Yeah, Adam Smith wrote the book Wealth of Nations. He's also the economic philosopher that came up with those 3 natural laws of economics that I went over earlier today. John, give me some more reference. You mean the goofiness by people not asking questions, but kind of talking about each other with the AP extra credit? Gotcha. Can I go over obstacles to industrialization? Sure. Some countries chose not to industrialize. One of the big picture obstacles to industrialization is lack of resources, right? If you don't have coal, if you don't have water power, if you don't have iron, then you're pretty much out of luck. Like you could trade for those things, but that's going to be really expensive, right? So harnessing the natural resources that you have, if you don't have those resources, if you don't have the factors of production, is going to make industrializing really difficult. So number 1 obstacle is, of course, resources. Number 2 obstacle is feudalism. Some countries, especially in Central Europe and Eastern Europe, like Russia, like Poland, like Austria, still had feudalism. And if you want to tell lords that they have to get rid of their farmlands and replace it with factories, they're not going to do that. Like, I'm making too much money. I have too much wealth. I have too much power. I don't want to end feudalism, right? So those are really the 2. Number 1, resources, factors of production being lumped in there. And then number 2, feudal societies not wanting to change. Grace, anti-favoritism now toward Grace. No more favoritism. That looks like one of those Saturday Night Live skits, the Coneheads. Wow, you really got me there, though. Nice one. Johnny, you cap all the time, so don't try to get me with the slang. I know what that means. You're capping a lot. What's the format for ARM again? Rephrase that, Josh. I don't know what that means. What is that picture war? I don't know what that is. But what is ARM? Can you give me another question there so I can get it? I'm waiting. Pia, now you're getting me, huh? That's cool. That's funny. No more favoritism. We can just take away your crown. That'd be really easy. We'll give it to I don't know. Give 2 to Lacey, or we'll give 1 to Lauren B. Maybe we'll give 1 to Maya. How about that? Okay, so what we got to think about here is Adam Smith. Just basically, he's an economist. He writes a book called The Wealth of Nations, which really talks about the 3 natural laws of the economy, and he's a big believer in the free market system, laissez-faire economics. Yes, you do need to know about the textile industry. All of the major inventions that we talked about were inventions that produced textiles. And then also you want to know that this is the first form of industrialization. It's in the textile industries. Capitalists and proletariat. This was according to Karl Marx. The capitalists are the people who have money. They're the factory owners. They're also known as the bourgeoisie, which is like upper middle class. The proletariat is like the poor working class. They're known as the have-nots. Okay. All right. I think those are all the questions that I've seen. Gabby has a question. Nice catch right there. Do we need to know any specifics for corporations? Yeah, you just want to know that corporations are companies that sell shares of stock to individuals, and then those individuals who buy the shares of stock actually become partial owners in the company. They share in the wealth of the company and the profits of the company, but the shareholders are not responsible for the debts of the company. Jay Pizzle. JP, are you excited for the half day? No, I'm not excited for the half day. I want the full day, but could be an ice storm or something. So we got to be careful. We got to have the safety of the students in mind. I also had to cancel my track and volleyball training, which hurts because I wanted to get a good day of training in. That really is bothering me. How many things should we list for socialism versus capitalism? Well, Bella, I would say number one thing is to know about who owns the factors of production. Like for socialism, factors of production are publicly owned or owned by the government. Capitalism, factors of production are privately owned. If you could do that, you will be in good shape. Janda, yeah, you need a mask. It's going to be no different. Hey, I'll take that. Yeah, give me that hair. Yep, I'll rock that any day. Okay, so you are going to need a, yeah, you're going to need a mask. You just did that to get your picture up there. Good job. What do we need to know about the continental Europe and industrialization? We've got to remember how the Napoleonic Wars caused problems with the economy there. It halted trade, which meant that what we saw is industrialization got to continental Europe a little bit later because of that. It took some time to rebuild the economies in those countries of continental Europe. Yes, Ava. Yeah, there you go. Nice one. You got me. Okay. Let me know how you're feeling. I'm going to stay on here for about 10 more minutes. I didn't see any updates on anybody coming up with anything clever at the beginning. Nice catch, John. You are so detailed. Yeah, I forgot to change that. I didn't change it. I didn't save it at 25. Wow. You are solid. You are solid. I like that, John. That's a sign of strength. Julian says aloha. I like that. Hawaiian. Very good. Some of the comments I'm seeing are pretty cool. Okay. Any other questions that I can help you with at all? Any other questions? I'll stay on here for just a few more moments. You can ask me anything at this point. I think we're pretty much covered as much as we need to know. So if you want to talk about something else other than history, go ahead. That's a good question, Johnny. The boys were supposed to have mass. You don't have mass tomorrow. So I'm not the administrator. I'm just a teacher. I would say probably not. Probably go with your polo. Like, I would appreciate if you wore your shirt and tie, because that's tradition of St. Mary's. You know, that's the way I think it should work. But, you know, that's totally up to you. Alex came with a real question. Why did Industrial Revolution begin in England? Well, there's a couple of factors. Number one, England had a very large workforce. Number two, they had the natural resources necessary. They had a lot of harbors, which would allow for the loading, the docking of ships with the goods so that they could transport it outward. So you have quite a bit of advantages there. Labor force, resources, harbors, a lot of rivers to run the water wheels. So those are some of the reasons why it begins in England. I think I missed a couple of questions here. How have I been? Oh man, I've been great. I'm doing really well. I can't complain. Love my job. Love what I'm doing. Track is coming up for me, so I'm really excited about that. What would happen if I dislike the video? Nothing. I mean, I don't know why you would dislike it. I hope that that's not a reflection on something that I did, Ashton. Is there still short answer about the agricultural revolution? It's a possibility. It could be funneled into a multiple choice too. So any of those key concepts could show up in multiple facets there. Yes, Grace, we are going to have class on Friday, especially now we're having a half a day. We got to get a session in Friday. So like I said, I'm going to teach the class. If you're there, you're there. If you're not, you can always use the video lesson. One thing I could do is I could record my teaching too, if you wanted to use that. But I mean, if you can make it, you should make it. I mean, it's only 25-minute class, so I don't see what the big deal is. Let's not be mean now. Let's not be mean on the comments, guys, okay? Bantering back and forth is one thing, but attacking people is not good. We don't want to do that, okay? But put what's on your mind is fine. Yeah, just don't attack others, right? Okay. Johnny, I went over this one. I said that early on, there were some tough things. You know, standard of living was not great. People were dying at a very young age. Life expectancy was not great. Diet was not great. People were losing their jobs to machines early on. But then over the course of time, things start to improve. People start to make more money. The wages improve because of unions and collective bargaining. The housing situation improves. Diets improve. Standard of living improves. More jobs are created overall. People can travel. People could transport goods by way of train, steamboats, you know. So the technology, I think, is really what made things a lot easier. Overall on the agricultural rev, well, it's basically just different scientific methods that were put in play on farms to essentially help increase what's called crop yield. So out of how many seeds you planted, how many of those seeds germinated and created a crop? That's crop yield. And then crop production, like things like the seed drill, things like crop rotation, right? Things like enclosure movement. Those are factors that led to an increased crop production. What was the most common machine? spinning Jenny for the longest time. Once the spinning mule and take that down for you, Pia. Once the spinning mule, yeah, that's Queen Zammers, by the way. Let's not mess with her. She's a boss. Once the spinning mule and the power loom were developed, they pretty much run the show. They became the more popular ones. But at first, it was the spinning Jenny predominantly. Okay. All right, I think we're good. Hey, some final pieces of advice. I'll check back for other questions. But hey, remember, make sure that you say thank you to your parents. That's really important. And make sure that you pray for the right things. Say the prayer of gratitude. Thank the good Lord for all the blessings that he's bestowed upon you. Pray for your health. Pray for your safety in your travels. Don't forget to do those things. Don't pray for like success on this quiz. This is so minuscule in the grand scheme of things. But ask the good Lord to guide you to use your talents to the fullest. That's one thing that I would say is something that you could do. You know, that would be, I think, appropriate here. And I think that goes for all of your classes. I imagine you have probably other quizzes going on today too. Tomorrow. So make sure that you are, being here now in all of your other classes. Like don't go to a class thinking about my quiz when you're taking a quiz in another one. That's, first of all, that's disrespectful. And second of all, you're not going to do well on that because you're not focused, right? So you need to make sure you're being here now throughout your entire day. Okay, with that, I think I am going to sign off. I'll hang out for just a few more minutes if there are any questions or comments that I could help with that come in. But otherwise, I just want to say thank you. And I'm not going to, I'm not going to see you very much over the next few weeks. So I want to make sure that you know that I care about you. I love you all. And I hope that you guys and gals have all a safe and enjoyable vacation here coming up. All right. Thanks for joining. Put your final comments in. I'll wait for just a minute or two, and we'll see you tomorrow. Josh, where do we find the AP? I'll have it in class tomorrow. I appreciate all of you saying thank you, but thank you too. I mean, I know it takes up part of your night, so thank you for joining. I hope that it was worthwhile for you. Hope that all your questions were answered. Maybe you got a little bit of a laugh from the bantering back and forth from some of the ballers there. But I just want to say thank you to you as well. Oh, I forgot to mention the candygrams I did have it on the intro, but the candygram, I thought it was a really cool idea. That was pretty sweet. Literally and metaphorically. All right. Well, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to see you tomorrow. So good luck. Get your final studies in. Of course, if you ever come up with another question, you know where to find me. You can use Instagram or you can use the email, whatever it is. I will make sure that I get back with you as soon as I can. Dominic, you should get some cocoa bombs. Yeah, I know Sophia had put out some special versions for Valentine's Day, but it's still snowing. So, hot chocolate in any form would be helpful. Yeah. I am out of cocoa bombs. My daughters absolutely love the cocoa bombs. So they go by fast in the Langle household. All right. Final goodbye. All right. Take it easy. Peace to all, and God bless.